Greetings, this is Dr. Jimmy, and this is going to be a rather different video than the ones I usually do. Let me get a bit closer. Hello, you can see me now. Yes, and I'm here with my lovely wonder cat Lenny, who's sitting just over there, where I can reach and pet her. A minute ago you would have seen her tail right here, because she was right in front of it before I turned this on. But she moved over to this side. How considerate of her. Nice little kitty. Lenny's a good cat and a pretty cat. Yes. Well, enough about the cat. This is about this sort of video I'm doing. It's hard to explain. A while back, I became aware of a young man who calls himself the Peeper. I don't know his real name. I don't know much about him at all because, you see, he spends most of his time all masked up. He does YouTube videos while wearing a silver mask. Looks like it might be made from aluminium foil, like a character on South Park. I don't know if it has anything to do with that. Probably not. He fancies himself a sort of superhero, perhaps an anti-hero. He seems to compare himself to Deadpool and Jason Voorhees and a couple of other creatures of that sort. Claims to live in Area 53. I suppose that's 2 areas away from Area 51. I don't know, but in spite of all that, likes Legos and Goosebumps and horror movies and video games, and has recently discovered Halloween Horror Nights. He's never not been to the event, but he's found on the internet Horror Nights, and he's found my videos, and he apparently rather likes my videos for some reason, so he has contacted me, and sort of took me aback a little bit, this person contacting me, but he's continued, and seems like a nice enough person for a cannibal superhero. I don't know, that's one of the things he says, but never gets out of role, so it's hard to really pin him down on who he really is, if he really is anyone at all, other than what he says. I don't know for sure, but that's the videos. Anyway, he made a video where he tagged me. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. Is it like when you're wrestling and you tag the other person to jump in the ring? I'm not certain what that meant in this instance, but what he says is that he wants me to make a similar video. I thought it was going to be a series of questions, but really there's only 3 things in the video. So basically he wants me to do is first pay myself a compliment, and then to pay him a compliment, and then to devise my own Halloween Horror Nights scenario, which of course I've done many times before in a joke parody way on April Fool's Day. But this is supposed to be a bit more serious, more of what I'd like to see at Horror Nights, and I guess I can do something along those lines, the sort of houses and scare zones and things I'd like to see at Horror Nights, I suppose, although I may not be able to give a full scenario. I'll do my best, but so to start that, I guess first I'm supposed to compliment myself. That's always a bit tricky. I'm not exactly the sort of person to toot my own horn, and you know, I've been taught that sort of bad form. So what? I suppose if I have to compliment myself, I can say truthfully that I've always tried to be kind. I've been taught to be that way, and I try to be kind to people. I try to put myself into their shoes and treat others the way I'd like to be trot, like to be treated myself. So I would suppose, yes, I guess that I try at least to be a kind person. So I guess that's my compliment. Now I'm supposed to compliment him, which is also a bit difficult because I don't really know him. I mean, his videos, and he's always masked, and who's under the mask? I mean, that's so. How can I compliment a person who's incognito? Well, the best thing I can think of, based on what I've been able to gather, is whoever or whatever the peeper is under that silver foil. He's a very imaginative and creative person. Obviously, he's imaginative, and so I can credit him there. And I suppose then, use your creativity, use your imagination, and it will take you to good places. Is my advice there. And that would be the best I can do for that. Now, a Halloween Horror Night scenario. Well, it's hard to do because I've done it so many times before, humorously, trying to think what would I actually like to see at horror, and I've seen so many of them. As was the Peeper pointed out, I've been to the 26 that they've had in Orlando from '91, and then all the way up to the recent one. So, been through so many haunted houses and scare zones and all of that. Hard to say. So, what would I devise if I were show running? And that's difficult. But first of all, haunted houses, of course, intellectual property seem to be the rule. So I would take a look at a lot of different intellectual properties and see which ones might make good houses for horror nights. Of course, you have to get the licenses. But television programs we have seen recently. There was From Dusk Till Dawn a few years ago, and then more recently, when of course Walking Dead for 5 years in a row, and now American Horror Story will be coming back for a second year. But those aren't the only television programs. There's lots of amazing stuff happening on telly right now. But the first house I would make, which this is a dream, right? This is my fantasy, would be The Walking Dead. What? You would do... That's crazy talk. You must be insane. Your dream fantasy horror nights would have a Walking Dead house? What's wrong with you, Dr. Jimmy? Have you gone, No, that's not it. It's just that they've done it 5 years and they never really got it right. It's a dream, right? It's a fantasy. So in my fantasy, they would go and renegotiate the whole contract with AMC and say, okay, if you want us to do a Walking Dead house, you have to let us do it right. All right? And throw out the shit in the contract that you've had us binding us. Because they were bound. They were bound to follow these rules for 5 years. All they could have in the house were all the freaking zombies. The only characters from the show they could use were just zombies. Every damn year. And that's why the house got so repetitive and dreary. It's just the damn zombies every year. I just got too much. Yeah, I'd have zombies in the house, but not as many. I would focus on what they could never use for 5 years. What people watch the show for. And that's the characters, the fascinating characters, heroes and villains. And have them in the house. Cast scare actors. No, that was a cat. Cast scare actors to play, based on how they look physically, to play those characters. So you have a scare actor as Rick, and Daryl with his crossbow, and Michonne with her katana, all of those sorts of characters fighting zombies. And you go to other scenes with the villains, the governor, like his eye patch. But even better, Negan. They actually see Negan going onto somebody's head with Lucille. Bash, bash, bash. You actually get to be in the room while that happens, and blood splatters everywhere. We can go back to, like it was in '92, when the blood splattered on the walls, and if you had a white shirt, you had to get it cleaned afterwards. Let's get like that again. Got excited. Gave myself Cough, sorry about that. Yeah, but you could do that. You know, you could have those characters going at each other and bloody conflict. And what's the other? Jadis and her weird group of goth people. You could all kinds of shit you could do. And of course, I'm being highly selfish because one of the highlights of my house, of The Walking Dead, would be King Ezekiel and his little kitty cat Shiva. Yes. Now, I understand the logistics of actually getting a real tiger and putting it into a haunted house are pretty much non-existent. I mean, the best you could do is have it behind a glass, you know, thick glass like they have at Animal Kingdom or Busch Gardens. It wouldn't work. But they've done some marvelous puppets with the werewolves and the aliens. And if they really tried, they could make a tiger that was so fucking lifelike. And wouldn't it be awesome to see this beast chowing down on the saviors, getting blood all over guts and tiger, growl, snarl, tail twitching like an angry kitty cat, ears back, glaring eyes, growling. Oh my, it would be wonderful. I'd love that. Plus, there's another benefit, an extra benefit. If we could get scare actors playing characters, if they could, they might even swing, because there's a connection between Horror Nights and The Walking Dead you might not be aware of. See, there's an actor who had worked for many years at Universal Studios and appeared in many Bill and Ted shows. His name is Jeremy Palko. Played many characters over the years in Bill and Ted's Excellent Halloween Adventure. Well, a couple of years ago, he got cast in The Walking Dead. He plays Andy, one of the people up on the hilltop, and he's been there the last 2 seasons of the program. He's been on The Walking Dead, and they could get a coup if they could get him to come back and play his character in the house. Not every night, of course, because they have to film the episodes, but he could come back maybe 1 or 2 nights during the event, and he would be there in the house, maybe making appearance and signing things, but he could also be in the house in costume and character as Andy in some key scenes, just to add a little kick of having one of the actual cast of the program in the house itself. Again, that's my fantasy dream of a perfect Walking Dead house they could have. Now, other television programs, I'm not going to go into detail about every house because I don't have time, but I can talk about different properties they could use. For television, there's been so many really amazing television programs. For example, Hannibal. Can you imagine all the startling visuals that were in that series with the Wendigo and everything? That would make an excellent haunted house at Universal. Maybe a couple of them. The new Twin Peaks, both the original series and the new third season that's on now on Showtime. There's some really fucking trippy, weird shit going on in that program, and you could make an amazingly freaky and scary haunted house out of Twin Peaks also. And then there's the longest running horror television program of all time, Supernatural, going into 12, 13 seasons now? I don't remember. But God, that could be, there's so much potential there for a haunted house, or 5 or 7 of them. Just one haunted house, but you could make all kinds of stuff out of Supernatural. Just make sure you have the big W at the end. And even a show like Game of Thrones. It's not really a horror program, but there's lots of startling visuals and monsters and witches and abominations and three-eyed crows and white walkers and God knows what else. It could make it an interesting and a very gory haunted house. You have to have the red wedding, blood spurting everywhere. It'd be quite fun. And dragon boobs, yeah. So yeah, all kinds of TV programs could make wonderful haunted houses. And of course, there's one I've been pulling for years. I've included it in April Fool's gags, but I'm serious about it. The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. I mean, it's been crying to be a haunted house for decades. Please, that's something I'd love to see also. Now, what about other intellectual properties? Motion pictures, of course, and we've had all sorts of wonderful movies as houses, and there's quite a lot on classic or older movies from the 70s or 80s that often get overlooked. And of course, there's some that people have been talking about, but I want to talk about ones that haven't been. There's all kinds of old movies. You could imagine a Poltergeist haunted house based on the classic film. That would be quite terrific, the original film. Or Gremlins, or or how about The Lost Boys? That might be fun. Or Near Dark might be a good one, a different vampire movie. Those are all distinct possibilities. But there's one film from the 70s that I would love to see as a haunted house. It's more obscure, but it just lends itself, so it's called The Sentinel. It's about a woman who gets a house, rents an apartment in a nice brownstone apartment in Brooklyn, and everyone else in the apartment building seem to be some kind of ghosts or specters or monsters throughout the entire. All sorts of weird scenes and creepy things keep happening, and apparently the gate to hell is located there, and she's being groomed to take over as the sentinel for the gate of hell. And there's just so many disturbing scenes that could be used in this as a haunted house, and weird creatures and horribly deformed, damned people from hell and everything. It would be just sensational. And of course, the birthday party for an evil cat. Black and white cat, black and white cake. Yes, I'd love to see a Sentinel haunted house, even if it's not as well known. So those are all possibilities. Movies. There are a few others I didn't mention. Of course, there's all kinds of movies that have been mentioned over the years, from Hellraiser to Killer Clowns, that are all decent, but there's just tons of possibilities. So, yeah, we'd have to pick a few IPs from TV programs and movies, and then some originals. Originals are harder because, they've done so much. They've had so many, almost every scenario you can imagine, from old western towns to haunted cemeteries. They've, and so perhaps let's take a look at potential sequels. One franchise, original franchise of Horror Nights, which has always been, has only been done once, and it was, and it has the potential for all sorts of sequel houses, and we haven't seen them yet. Nightingales. And there's all kinds of places in history you could have nightingales, but one of my favorite ideas, and this is what I'd like to see, they did those ninja geishas chainsaws last year, and before that we had some Japanese scenes in Run, Blood, Sweat and Fears. They've been toying with a Japanese haunted house or idea, but they haven't really realized it yet. Well, let's go for it with the Nightingales. We'll have the Nightingales showing up in feudal Japan. And they can be like yurei, white kimonos and long black hair until they become their horrible face, and they can be fighting with ninjas and samurais and all kinds of, in a feudal war that's going on between a shogun and a rival clan, the sort of thing that happened in Japan in those days. All kinds of decapitations, ritual suicides, and all that neat stuff you get out of an Akira Kurosawa movie, but with nightingales added in. I think that would be excellent. Most, I would say it would be kakkoi desu ne, yes, which is Japanese for cool. Yes, so I'd like to see that. Then we'd also have, let's see, there was something I was thinking of before. Now I can't remember. I should have written down. Silly of me. It'll come to me in a minute. Let's see. Oh yeah, we had Hades' Gates of Ruin. We touched on Greek mythology. Why not go into Norse mythology? And I kind of had an idea about this before, and I've joked about it. But why not a house called Ragnarok and Roll, right? And we have like Norse gods, and it's the end, and Götterdämmerung, and they're falling out of Valhalla onto the earth. And the evil creatures of Norse mythology, the trolls and frost giants and fire demons, Surtur, and the great Midgard serpent, and the wolf Fenrir, and all of these things are upon the earth to destroy humanity, and the, and the gods are battling, but they don't really care about the humans, you see, because the Norse gods, a lot of them are bastards. Just watch American Gods and Mr. Wednesday, you'll get the idea. It doesn't have to tie in any way to any upcoming Marvel movies, just like Hades' Gates of Ruin didn't have to tie into Clash of Titans, but you know, they can use the same font. But not exactly, but they could, you know, they could make this more visceral and less comic booky. But I think it would be a nifty notion. And they could do something else with giggles and gore. I understand that was supposed to be the first in a series of houses, and we haven't seen what comes next. And it's always fun to use killer clowns. I joked once before about a clown distribution. I mean, once you get the clowns in the factory, then what? And so, something like that, but not like a pizza delivery, but somehow the clowns are now being sent to birthday parties. So you can go to different birthday parties, from little kids' birthday parties to maybe an office party with the boss, and the clowns are there and they wreak havoc, you know, killing people with staplers and all sorts of things you can imagine. That's a possibility as well. But how about fully original concepts? That's a great deal more difficult. Coming up with something that's never been tried before. I don't know if I can even do that. And if I had a really good original concept, maybe I want to keep it to myself a bit longer. But yeah, there's all sorts of possibilities. How about a house set in a casino? We haven't had that yet. We could bring Lady Luck back, whether as the icon of the event or as, you know, Double for Nothing could be the name of the event, because after all, she's come back. And maybe she can be given a couple other aspects or some other characters that, you know, might be her henchmen. I could imagine a horrible creature called Snake Eyes, right? Or some other, take gambling ideas and twist them into weird creatures. You know. Have a Joker's Wild, take that to another extreme. All kinds of ideas they could have with that. But an original icon, an original haunted house for an original icon, that's a bit more challenging. I've toyed with an idea of an evil toy maker, similar perhaps to the puppet master they had in Singapore, but different, because this is more of a Willy Wonka type character, perhaps a bit more twisted, and he has a factory where he makes toys. And we've had toy factory ideas before, Chucky, especially in Japan, but this would be, and this is my twisted idea. He takes over Horror Nights completely and wants to manipulate everybody. He's sort of like a puppet master, but not exactly. He wants to take over. And so what he's done is he's captured all the icons and he's turned them all into toys. And so you go through this toy factory and the icons are there turned into toy dolls. Specifically vinyls with oversized heads. Yes, Funko Pops, but they don't use the name Funko Pop because that's a trademark. But it's obvious what they're getting at with the big face, you know, and the sort of what's the word? You know, neutral face that they use on every one of those, the very big heads and the little plastic bodies. So you have these horrible Funko Pop versions of Jack and the Usher and the caretaker, director, storyteller coming after you, Chance, Lady Luck, whoever else you might want to use. Maybe even throw in HR Blood and Guts and a couple of others in parody versions of their haunted houses, you know, all toys and silly things, you know, like little toy cameras for the little toy camera for the director, and you know, little children pop-up books with a storyteller, you know, a little toy flashlight, you know, not a real one, but like a toy with a little button you push, and it's like a little LED comes on, little toy flashlight for the usher, little toy movie cinema thing with not really movie pictures, but it has slides, and you put the little plastic things in and out, you know, like those little toys you might have had in vintage toys. That kind of thing, I think, would be quite silly. Of course, you don't want to use Cindy because she's already, that's too close to Cindy's actual reality. But you can have the caretaker, maybe Eddie and a few others. It would be quite funny, I think. So that's my notion for a twisted toy maker house that might take over all the other icons, until at the end of the house the icons revolt and kill the toy maker and resume their rightful positions as the icons of Horror Night. That might be. It's going to actually, you'd actually be rooting for Jack and the caretaker director, all rooting for these characters instead of trying to get away, because you're actually on their side now. Isn't that a fun idea? So that's sort of my idea. Scare zones, that's harder to figure out. I've always wanted to see werewolves with chainsaws because of Chainsaw Wolf, which is the most venerable online group of Horror Night fans. Always wanted to see werewolves with chainsaws, and that's something I've wanted to see for a hell of a long time. I'd like to have that in the streets in some sort of scare zone, and make a chainsaw drill team made out of werewolves. And I would like to see in Kids Zone, if they could put a scare zone back in Kids Zone. Why not a Kids Zone scare zone that's themed to it, like a evil SpongeBob scare zone, or better yet, Scooby-Doo, which is already scary, you know. And at the end of the scare zone, they take off the head. Oh my God! It wasn't a mask. There's nothing in it there but blood and some tendons. Ooh, they just ripped off some poor bastard's head. Whoops! Velma's very strong, you know, freakishly strong. They could also do... I've always wanted a Lovecraft scare zone. We actually had that with what you call it, Dead Man's Wharf was very much like Deep Ones, but they could do something even more freakish with ghouls and night gaunts, or something along those lines. But it depends on what area you put it in. Maybe in the forest, you know, Central Park, you could have some of the more sinister Lovecraftian creatures and Cthulhu rising from the lagoon, that sort of thing. Frightening aspect there. But you also but they've done so many, and it's hard to, you know, I was thinking maybe something Jungle Tribal. They did that back in 2003. And I'm thinking, well, maybe something Hawaiian. That would be interesting. You know, almost like a parody of Moana. But where would you put that? In Volcano Bay, yes, but not at Universal Studios Florida. So it's hard to come up with an idea for a scare zone that would work well off the top of your head. But, you know, they do vintage horror movies a lot and that sort of thing, but there was something I had and now I've lost it. If I can remember what it was. I think it was from an IP that would work better as a scare zone than as a haunted house. And, oh well, I may have to save that for later and come up with it again. So I should have taken notes before I did this. I told the Peeper once he should write notes, and then, because he asked me about one of his videos, what did I think? I said, well, if you'd do it better if you wrote notes ahead of time. And here I am, I forgot to do that myself. There you go. So you have to follow your own advice, Jimmy. Shows, of course, Bill and Ted. Always Bill and Ted. Always Bill and Ted. We don't really need a second show, but if you had one, I really liked the dance show they did last year. So one that was themed more diabolically would tie in with the whole event. If they were doing, for example, if they had a particular icon or theme or scare actors from the different scare zones or houses, they could incorporate them into the show in some ways. Not necessarily dancing, but to have their images on the screens and have it worked into the storyline of the dance if they do Academy of Villains again. Or they could do something completely different, like a magic show, but not an actual magic show like Penn and Teller they had in Hollywood, or they had the Pendragons, and what was the other one? Brian Brushwood. But one that was a horror-themed magic show created there for horror nights, where, you saw someone in half, and guess what? Ooh, they're actually sawn in half. Whoops! That sort of thing, rather than putting them back together, because the volunteers are part of the show, right? Okay, oh, that didn't work. Well, let me try something else. We'll put these swords through, and stab on either side, and blood starts trickling out, and then you open the box, and oh, he's impaled. That sort of thing would be a fun show, I think. And you could, that might be just quite delightful. So that's just an idea. But I think Owen Disney had a better magician scenario. He had a magician icon as one of his. So what I'm supposed to know is tag other people. Tag other people and tell them to do likewise. Pay yourself a compliment, pay me a compliment, I guess, and then make up a Horror Night scenario of your own. Hopefully less random stream of consciousness as mine was. I thought about this for a while, but I didn't stop and write it down, and I should have. So please write it down, do better than I did. And I'm just going to say, anyone who's watching this out there, do likewise. Whether it's, there are some named people, Owen Disney and others, who might be watching this, but I don't know if they'd like to do that. But anybody at all, really, anyone who wants to do this, then go ahead and do that, and continue this disturbing behavior in other videos yet to come. So I guess that's where we'll leave you for now, and maybe someday I'll be able to see. This is why I'm not in art and design, because I didn't write down and draw pictures. That's what they do. I just, rambled on like a silly person. So that's it. This is the video. I'm not even sure what I'm going to call it yet. Until that, I might do another video later today. I finally get to part 5 of of the Horror Nights 25 history, eventually. Alright, until then, this is Dr. Jimmy, and have a great rest of your life. Yeah.